And today's talk, as you know, is about my sister's house. I didn't know about this, but apparently we've heard Nilda talk before, 9 years ago, I guess. Lynn Meyer is one of our club's longtime members and most well-traveled member. She's been volunteering with my sister's house now 10 years, and she'll share her experiences and then turn it over to Nilda Valmores, the executive director of the sister's house. Um, anyway, and now Lynn.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. Wherever you are, if you're out there in your living room or wherever you are, it's nice that you're joining us and we're happy you're here. As Ray said, I've been a volunteer with my sister's house for about 10 years, mainly concentrating on teaching English as a second language. And I've done a few other things as needed to help with volunteering, but mainly working with these ladies, very strong, wonderfully courageous women who are trying to get their lives back together after an issue of domestic violence or human trafficking, whatever their situation was, that if they have a language difficulty, then I am there to help them with that. And most of you know that my sister's house takes care mostly of Asian Pacific Islander women, but they're open to anybody. So we have many people, many women from other parts of the world, and which is a good match for Friendship Force, because so many of us have been to many different countries trying to understand the culture, trying to understand how these women have lived their lives. And sadly, the domestic violence and the human trafficking have gotten into their lives in a very sad way. But the women I've worked with have been so courageous in trying to get their lives back together again and do language learning as part of it, or working at my sister's cafe downtown, which is getting them back into the workforce as well. So there are other things that they do and that our volunteers do to help them. And Nilda is a wonderful executive director, and she has many staff members who are terrific at helping these ladies, working with them to get their lives back together in various and sundry ways, whether it's helping them at the safe house. And Nilda will talk more about the specifics of what my sister's house is involved with in their lives. Of course, donations are always welcome. And I will briefly mention the fact, and Nilda can go into this with further detail, that later this summer or in the fall, there will be opening a donation facility to really concentrate on Asian Pacific Islander pieces of leftover things that you may not want anymore, but good quality Asian or Pacific Islander items that will be resold at this place. And Nilda will probably be able to mention more about that, because it should be a wonderful opportunity to donate some things to the fundraiser for my sister's house, which this secondhand shop will end up being. So I urge you to listen to Nilda, who will do a wonderful description of what the vast amounts of information my sister's house will help with these women's lives. And with that, I will be happy to introduce Nilda Valmores, the executive director of my sister's house. Take it away, Nilda.
Thank you, Lynn. And I'm so grateful to this invitation from Friendship Force to speak again, but especially grateful for Lynn's involvement with my sister's house, for being part of our family, for bringing on her husband, George, and just for being there at so many of our events and helping our clients. Especially when I know how many different organizations are out there, the fact that Lynn spends some of her time with us is such a great honor. So I'm very thankful for that. And I hope that after today that I might be able to convince others, and I think that's some of Lynn's wish too, that we might have other Friendship Force folks involved with my sister's house also. So wish me luck. I prepared a slideshow presentation for you. Hopefully we can make this work. I think, and help me out. I think I go to share screen now, right? And
correct. Go ahead and hit click share screen. Is your slideshow presentation open in the other window already?
It's open. Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
Hit share. Share screen is on the bottom of your thing, and then the box will open up, and then you click on the slideshow.
Okay. So why does the box look different now? Sorry. Do I do
What's that?
advanced sharing options?
No, just go to share screen again. Just
Okay,
click that.
got it now. Okay,
Yeah, and then click, and then you'll
okay,
hit share after you
got it.
choose.
Moment of panic.
No worries. You got it.
Is it,
Okay, we're seeing it.
you're seeing it?
Yep,
Yay.
that's good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we've been around since 2000. Picture of us on the left is of us participating in the Martin Luther King Walk, making a statement that human trafficking unfortunately still exists today. And the picture on the right is right after the massage parlor incidents, and we engaged some Asian women leaders in the area to say that the incidents of Asian hate crime have to stop. So this is just some of the ways that we've been fighting domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. As Lynn mentioned, our mission has been to serve Asian Pacific Islander women. I want to add, I don't know if you see me circling here, that other underserved women and children. Lynn also mentioned that women come in from all ethnicities, come in the door. So we never turn anybody away, whether they be of color or not of color. We don't just actively promote it, but we just, and we have, if you look at our stats, you will see that we have a very diverse crowd that we assist. The only requirement for those that we assist is that they have to be victims of either domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. And how we assist is we try to provide a culturally responsive safe haven, and we provide job training and community services. Our hope, to be honest, is that we get out of business one day, so that there isn't that, but we know that there's a lot of work to be done. And so we will continue to do that work while until that day happens where we can not have to deal with issues of abuse. What's different about my sister's house is that we're the only culturally responsive shelter in the Central Valley. So not just Asian Pacific Islanders culturally responsive, but just as a culturally responsive shelter, right? Which means that we're really trying to focus on providing services differently. And we're the only one like outside of the Bay Area, north of LA up to the Oregon border. The other thing that makes us unique is we're also the only domestic violence shelter operating a social enterprise. In our case, it's My Sister's Cafe. We do that purposely because we really believe that it's not just about providing shelter, it's also about dealing with what happens after you leave a domestic violence situation. Right? That there has to be some independence, maybe not total independence, but there has to be beginnings of independence there. And so the operating the cafe as a job training place is part of that. And we do more than just operate the cafe, and I'll get into that. So our core services include prevention, because it's important for people to know the signs so that they don't get into bad relationships, or they know the signs so they can stop the bad relationships that they are in or that their friends or family are in. Intervention is the part where we're able to help people begin to escape. And that includes having a 24/7 multilingual helpline. And it also includes a 6-bed emergency shelter and 2 6-bed transitional shelters. We also, as I mentioned, we're really about like thinking about the future. And some of this I think is part of our cultural responsiveness. I always tell people, like, I don't think that My Sister's House would have been able to grow had we not had this piece. I know it was the piece that interested me when I was first joining, because I knew that there could be shelters, but you know, what happened afterwards. And so that's what we call our Women to Work program. So that includes our legal services, our counseling, and our job training, right? And then different things like, as with Lynn's piece of helping folks, you know, we can help them learn some skills to do on a job, but obviously English is really important here in the States so that they could be successful at a job. And so we appreciated Lynn expressing an interest in that and being a great volunteer helping some of our survivors. So the Women to Work program is very broad in that sense, but it really tries to deal with let's make sure that our survivors have a life after they leave my sister's house. So what's our impact been? Hopefully these stats tell you. Sometimes it's worded differently because we didn't, even though we started first as a public education campaign. So we didn't start with shelter right away. But since 2001, we've reached out to a lot of people. These are probably undercounts. And you can see that there's unfortunately been a great need for our services. The picture on the right is just to tempt you with food from one of our dishes. It's a little bit extended, I can see, but it's one of our delicious salads at my sister's cafe. I always tell people as an aside that you go to my sister's cafe, but there's no fried food. So if you're looking for unhealthy, we have unhealthy coffee drinks, boba drinks, but not unhealthy. Like we don't have my personal favorite of French fries. We don't have that, or fried chicken. That's not there. But good healthy salads and good healthy sandwiches are there. Just briefly, what's domestic violence? I always love to include just as a friendly reminder for folks. You know, bottom line, it's an issue of power and control, right? So if somebody's feeling controlled by somebody else, no matter what their age is, it's important to call it what it is, to recognize that it's domestic violence. And the other thing that I think is important to know is that unfortunately, oftentimes the issues only get worse. They don't get better. And so it may be that first someone's just calling somebody stupid, and then later on they're getting, they might hit the person, they might hit their partner, then they might really beat up their partner, and then the ultimate separation and sad story at the end. But it's really important to listen to those threats and to be sensitive to them because they do occur, and it's hard to deal with, but it's important to. I just had an email from a family recently, and they were talking about their 80-year-old mother being influenced by her 60-year-old partners decades younger, and they can't even see their loved one. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone getting broken bones, but it could be control of folks, and it could even be language control of folks. And to know, it's important to know that this is a common occurrence, unfortunately. 1 out of 3, sometimes it's 1 out of 4 women that you'll see that have been affected by some form of domestic violence. And you'll see the bottom of how much that affects us economically. Right? It's one of the reasons that we've been really concerned with the past couple of years of COVID, of what this has meant for many of our Asian women. You can see, unfortunately, that not many people go to the hospital. I should add to that. Oh, I thought I corrected that typo and I just made it worse. Sorry. Also, not many people end up calling the police, right? Usually it's other people that call the police for them. During this COVID times, what it's meant is it's meant that there's been an increase in stress and abuse calls. We're worried about the calls that are still going to come as other parties go back to work or go back to more normal, getting out and about. Right now, there's a lot of COVID funds, but we're worried about what happens after those funds expire. And obviously, or maybe not obviously, but the Asian Pacific Islander community has been hit on different levels because of COVID, the political and historical discussion of COVID. What I will say, what people don't know, when you hear about the Asian hate crimes, 60% of those Asian hate crimes have been on Asian women of all ages. Yeah. And obviously, especially older Asian women. Important, appreciate, one of the ways that you can make a difference with my sister's house, with the issue of domestic violence, is really just listening and believing the person when they tell you, whether it be a family member or a neighbor. It's important that you support that person, and so that they can go to the next step of getting some help that they need. Important that you validate their decision and that you let them know that they shouldn't have to be treated this way. It is, I always tell people, like, it's really, you can imagine it's really difficult for people to talk about whether they're talking to a doctor or talking to a friend. And just in terms of thinking about Asian Pacific Islanders, and what I didn't share this time yet is that, we started because there were unfortunately some deaths involving some Asian women in the area. And so there were community leaders who said, we have to do something different, that there are obviously cultural nuances that make this work different. So it's important, and I think this is what My Sister's House does, is that we start off with recognizing the difference of Asian Pacific Islanders, both culturally within the different communities, and then also by generation. It's also important to note that survivors often, especially survivors in general, understate their trauma, and that is most definitely true for Asian Pacific Islander survivors. So whatever survivors in general do, I think you can take it, like, maximize it, multiply it further in terms of Asian Pacific Islander survivors. And in part because we're not supposed to be, sharing what's going wrong with our families. We have roles that we're supposed to be upholding, and that value of shame, unfortunately, is still strong. And then there's also that shame is so strong that sometimes within our Asian communities, the women are shunned, and still today, from their local community, if they do share, if they do reach out for help. And that's very hard for those that are brought up on the importance of family and importance of community to now suddenly lose that because they're speaking up as to what's going wrong in their household. Often there's concern of immigration status. Again, it's really difficult to establish rapport. And there are often family members who will give them a message that we don't want them to hear at My Sister's House, i.e. stay with your husband or your partner, because that's what you're supposed to do, supposedly. Lynn had mentioned that there might be people willing to volunteer. And so here are some ways that you could, Friendship Force members could volunteer. Often, this outreach and education is really important. We believe in that because that's how people learn about My Sister's House. And so we appreciate being invited to today. If there are other groups that you're involved with, that's a great way to help us. If you want to help us, like, for example, our Run for a Safe Haven is going to be coming up. And if you want to help us with organizing that event, that would be wonderful too. Our crisis line training, if you're interested in hearing stories, we appreciate that help. It's helpful if you speak another language, but if your first language is empathy, that's the language that we need the most. we have other volunteers who do speak other languages, so you don't have to speak another language. To answer the crisis line, which I think is an important first step in terms of dealing with clients face to face, it is helpful to go through the 40-hour training that I will talk about a little bit more. The shelter is another way to help us, but this also requires people having received training. Okay. But one way that I'm currently looking for is we are wanting to open a shelter. What my sister's house talk about is an emergency shelter for Muslim women. And so we're looking for someone who will rent to us. And so if you have property in the area that you might be willing to rent to us, it would be totally for the shelter purposes. There are restrictions that we need in terms of making sure that our people are safe. But we could have a conversation. I would love to have a conversation with you later about that. Our Women to Work program, we have volunteers who sometimes help us practice with interviews with clients, or not practice, we're hoping to have folks that will like mentor clients more. Sometimes folks help us with food prep. Lynn mentioned that Asian story that we're talking about. I'm like this close to signing the lease. So I'm hoping that we're just waiting to get one local clearance. And it's basically, it's going to be called My Sister's Treasures. And the idea behind it is that we provide retail job skills for some of our survivors. So we're working on both a retail job skills and also e-commerce job skills that we're going to do through this place called My Sister's Treasures. And we're starting it off with a focus on Asian Pacific Islander items, kind of hoping to make it an upscale gift store, thrift store. And so helping us with that would be wonderful too. If you happen to have legal expertise, always could use other volunteer legal assistance, and even more if you have immigration experience. And if you don't have any of those experience, but you're great at eating food and maybe great at posting about your food experiences, please come to My Sister's Cafe and enjoy some wonderful food. Or if you're having a group of friends over Monday through Friday, or if you're, at a work site, we do cater, we do deliver. Oops. I just wanted to tell you our two big goals. I mentioned one of them was the starting the Muslim shelter. And the other the other one was My Sister's Treasures. Another great way to help is our gala that we're having tomorrow, just to let people know about it, and especially invite you to let someone, if you're concerned about them in terms of them, they might be experiencing domestic violence or sexual assault, please tell them to join the show so that they can see the wonderful, oftentimes folks want to see who's supporting, and then they hear about our services. We'll have a survivor who will share her story. So it's free to register. And that's the registration, that PayB address is the registration form on it. And if you miss this, it's also on our website. Okay, but that would be a great way to support us. We also have a wonderful silent auction, live auction that will be going on. Very excited. We have the Lieutenant Governor and Attorney General coming on to present awards to Genevieve Sharoma and Sierra Health Foundation. We also have Rosanna Herber, who's a SMUD board member from the Elk Grove area, Paulo Villacrez, who is the San Juan City School Board president, and then also Katie Valenzuela, who is the city council member, one of the Sac City council members, and they're doing a cutest song, along with, we have the media folks from CW31 that will be performing, including Jordan Segundo, who is a past American Idol finalist, or The Voice, sorry, I forget which one. And then lastly, we have Neil Niar, who is a 15-year-old sensation who knows how to play 100 plus, has the world record, 100 plus instruments. In fact, has the world record for the number of instruments that he plays. So it's going to be a fun event. So please come join us. It'll be a quick hour, I promise. And if you want to know more on how we operate, June 30th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, we'll be having a volunteer orientation, and those are some ways to join us. I mentioned our Run for a Safe Haven. You can walk for and not run if walking is more your style. It'll be a great community event, as it always is. And I tell you, we have the best breakfast bar of all the races that I've been to, many races. And that's, of course, because ours has got a little bit more of an international flavor. And I will say that there are many people who just come to the event including my husband, who just comes for the food. And on occasion, he might shortcut the run or path, usually just comes for the food and to watch the show and say hi to people. And there are others that always come in, and they're always coming on Asian time. So like the race is supposed to start legit at 9 o'clock, and like at 9:30, they're just arriving at the park. So they're just there to show support and get some exercise and have some fun. So I invite you to be part of that. And finally, we have our domestic violence training, which runs for 5 Saturdays. That begins September 11th. And that's where you can get the 40-hour training that I mentioned that Lynn has been through, that really goes in depth on understanding how the domestic violence system works in Sacramento, and also has a big cultural component because of my sister's house work. And I think it's really important life training, important reinforcement, even if you know some of the stuff already. Okay, so now I'm going to pause and see what questions that people might have.
We can go ahead and have you stop sharing there, and we'll open it up to questions. I don't have a question, but while people are thinking, and everybody should be able to unmute yourself. I will go click ask all to unmute, but you don't have to unmute yourself unless you're ready to ask a question. I just wanted to point out something. While you were talking, I looked up your Facebook site and found the gala under the event section on your Facebook. So I'm going to share that on my Facebook page and encourage other people to do the same to help promote it for you. So people could try that.
Thank you so much.
There was, Audrey had a question. Do you see many sexually trafficking victims?
So I don't know what many is, but we do have our share of traffic victims. We actually got into it because, you know, we're still actually, for all intents and purposes, even for today, 20 years later, our organization is considered a small organization for nonprofits, right? Although I think we're getting like small to medium, I think would be fair to say. So the fact that we see, you know, the survivors that we do, and years ago, people would be telling us stories, and they were stories that were just much more than domestic violence. So I often tell people that there's a big intersection between domestic violence and human trafficking. And that's why we got into this work of human trafficking. And usually, oftentimes people will come to us and they won't say that they're a trafficking victim yet, because it's, you know, who even wants to call themselves a victim, whether it be domestic violence or human trafficking, right? But so we do have our share of human trafficking victims. The other thing that I always tell people is that there's different types of human trafficking, right? So we have a lot of victims that are primarily mail order bride victims. And then on occasion, we have our share. We probably have our good share of victims that are also victims that have walked the streets. They don't tend to be Asian. And then we deal with calls, but we're not as successful, both in terms of the number of calls and the number of clients. We feel that there's a lot of need out there in terms of dealing with those that are massage parlor victims.
Okay, you had another question in the chat from Patricia. What is your biggest need for volunteers?
You know, I kind of do it differently. I mean, or we kind of do it differently. We kind of start off with what is the volunteer's interest, right? Because if the volunteer is happy, then they'll come back. And that not everybody can do, not everybody is meant to answer crisis line phone calls. But I have a wonderful volunteer who's been helping with organizing our silent auction, and she loves it, you know, but she would hate doing working with on the crisis line. And so I take people from where they're at in terms of what they're interested in, and usually we'll find a need for that. And so that's a big part of it. But the one thing, you know, again, I want to say is, like, if you want to work with clients, you got to go through the 40-hour training.
Okay.
But you don't have to go through the 40-hour training, and you don't necessarily have to work with clients.
Okay, thanks. That's good. PJ, you had a comment in the, do you want to ask her your question directly?
We had Katie Valenzuela and a few of the other women who are on city council and some other county positions come talk to us at AAUW, and also in Sacramento too. So AAUW a couple times Katie talked to them. And you mentioned Katie, but I was wondering about Mai Vang, because she mentioned her background and how she had to ask the elders in her community whether she could run and get the okay from all of the people, and it had to do with her Asian background. So I was just curious whether she's involved in
yeah, so she was actually in our gala last year, and with some of her siblings, and she was on our gala a few years ago with different siblings. So she's been a wonderful supporter of my sister's house. We do try to rotate like different people, so it's not the same cast all the time, but I'm very grateful for Mai Vang's support. And in fact, that picture that I showed you in one of the early pictures of the women leaders, Mai was a big feature speaker in that protest against the Asian hate crimes, against the Asian massage parlors. So we work together with Mai a lot, and appreciate, she's been a longtime supporter of my sister's house.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
So Mary and Eric, you had a question. Do you want to ask it directly?
Yes. How many victims do you typically handle at a time? And what is the typical age range?
Great question. So we typically handle during a year about 500 clients. That's not counting the crisis line. So the crisis line typically handles about 3,000 calls plus a year. Okay. But of that, in terms of seeing and actually coming in person to receive some help from us, it's about 500. And in terms of the age range, you know, when I first started, I thought like we'd be seeing a lot of like 18 years old to 24 years old. It's quite the opposite. We tend to see older women. So when I say older women, I'm thinking like older than 30. And I think probably 30 to 60 is probably where the chunk of our people that we are helping. And we have even helped a 60-year-old plus victim of human trafficking that was working at a massage parlor. Not recently, but we have helped.
Another question came up from Patricia that's sort of related to this. Said she understands that Sacramento is the largest city in the United States for human trafficking. Is that correct?
You know, there are different accounts for that. So I'm not quite sure that I would say that that's correct. I'm sure it's a moving target. I think what I would agree to is that Sacramento does have a human trafficking problem. right? And it has a significant human trafficking problem. And I should say the Sacramento region, not just Sacramento City proper, right? And that's in part because, you know, we're in California, so we've got the coast issue, and we've got also the coast issue in terms of the Asian Pacific Islander side, coast issue also in terms of Mexico, right? And we've got the highways that's running through, both in terms of north to south and also east to west, being to the Reno area. And so that's why I believe that and others believe that Sacramento has a severe human trafficking issue. Where that stat came from is that a few years ago, they had one of nights where I think every major city did a raid on human trafficking issues, and then we ranked the highest that night in terms of the number, I think, of people captured. But that's not always the case from year to year. And so that's kind of gotten one of those media things. But I unfortunately will say that we have a big issue in Sacramento still.
I'm going to switch questions just a little bit. Jean-Laurie had a question about your clothes closet. You want to ask that?
Sure. You may not know this, but Weave is no longer taking clothes. At least they weren't about a month ago. I know myself, and I suspect others may have some very good work clothes that we'd love to get rid of. How do we do that?
Yeah, we would love to take them. We usually take only women's clothes. And we, because of COVID, which I think is why Weave is not taking them right now, but I think I just saw somewhere that they are opening up their thrift store again, so that may change soon. But we would love to take your clothes, and Mondays is usually when we take them. But if you could not do tomorrow, only because we've got our gala that we're worrying about. And so if I could reduce the stress on staff, I would love to do that. But usually we take the clothes Mondays from like 9 to 5.
Okay, and what do you need? I have business clothes. I'm not in town, so I couldn't even do it on Monday. But what are your needs? What do you guys need? And I did talk to Weave. And the reason that they were no longer taking clothes is they had a whole warehouse full. During the pandemic, everybody cleaned out their closets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So we take it all, usually like a little above like super casual, super homey. So a little bit above that level. So really more like casual work. There's less of a need for formal suits than there were before everywhere, right? And so, and we just ask that they be clean and gently used, or new, and we don't worry about the sizes. What we do tell people is like we offer it to the clients. What is not taken, we do have space issues, and so we then do take it to other nonprofits afterwards if clients don't pick it up.
Okay, Audrey, did you want to chat about your question on volunteering?
Oh, I was just curious as to how often you provide the volunteer training.
Thank you so much for asking that, since I forgot to say. So we offer it twice a year. So right after Labor Day is the one of the times, and then the other time is in the spring, like February, March. Those dates tend to change depending upon when Easter and Passover hit.
And if you can attend like all but 1 or 2 sessions, then does that mean you can't, or can you pick up those sessions at a later time?
Yeah, we know how difficult it is. And I would imagine especially difficult with Friendship Force members, especially if they have lives like Lynn, right? So usually what we tell people, if you could make sure you attend the first 2, because the sessions do build upon each other. And then we can't give you a certificate, and we obviously would want to use your help still, but we would ask that you finish in the next round, the training. And we know that life happens, so it's okay. But if you could especially attend the first 2, I think it's helpful for understanding where we're going.
Well, I think that's all the questions we had in the chat. Is there anyone else who wants to say something or ask a question? Just go ahead and unmute yourself. And not hearing anything. Well, no, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much. That was really informative. I think we're going to turn it back over to Ray right now.
Thank you for your help and support. Hope to see you tomorrow night.
Okay. Ray, you want to take over?
Yes, I don't have much to take over though, just to
Okay.
say thank you very, very much. I learned a lot. I didn't really know much of anything about your organization. So kind of opened my eyes a little bit. So we will be talking with the board about possibly helping. Oh, Lynn, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, since you've got several of your board members there, that it might be good to think about I think the date was October 23rd for the Run for a Safe Haven, that we might make that a gathering for Friendship Force to go do the run or the walk for a safe haven. So that might.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, we
The
could put
board would
together a
like to talk
team
about.
to help in some way.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, good.
With the
Yeah.
Friendship Force banner.
Yeah.
There you go. The other thing I'd like to, that struck my mind when she was talking for us is that we often need catering. So that might be a good place for us to utilize their services at some of our events. So.
Yeah.
So since you guys are great travelers, I just want to tell you in our live auction tomorrow, we've got, well, granted nothing to a foreign country, but at least we have like Florida, Tahoe, Monterey, Oregon, some trips that are on there.
Sweet. All right. We'll have to go check that out. Okay, well, I think that's it. Unless someone else has something else to share, I think we all want to thank you. There was, oh, no, nothing else there. But yep, so thank you so much. Great job. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Talk to you all later.
Hey,
See you soon, Nilda. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.